Unfortunately, Donald Trump is president-elect. So we got to figure out what we're going to do next, because he's already busy implementing Project 2025. What are our next steps? That's the topic of this video. Stay with me. Hello, everyone. I am civil rights attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, and it really should in a day like today, like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll get notified every time we upload one of these videos. And my TikTok family, just make sure you watch and share this video. Now, before we get into this topic, please go over to Amazon.com. Make sure to grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice, if you have an African-American son in public school. They are mistreating him in ways you probably don't know, but I will teach you in this book how you can resist that mistreatment and become his strongest advocate. All right, with that said, yes, I want to share some vital information with you about how we must fight and resist Trump and Maga. Now, in the previous video, I told you that I plan to continue to fight and resist MAGA. But I must remind you that resistance movements like the one I'm creating demand unity, organization, leadership, strategy, and oh yes, sacrifice. And that's why I created the Amka resistance movement. And I need your help. Amka is a Swahili word that means wake up or rise in urgency. I chose this name because I have been a Pan-Africanist for over 40 years, and I wanted a name that honors and reflects our African heritage. I also made Amka an acronym which stands for Rise, Mobilize, Keep Advancing. But this is not just a name. Amka is not just a name, it is a mission. Amka will become a grassroots movement, grounded in unity, purpose, and strength. Amka is also a nonviolent movement, but I want to be clear. We value our Second Amendment right to bear arms. In fact, I believe every law-abiding African-American should own firearms and be firearm trained and knowledgeable. I call this being armed and informed. If you want to know more about being armed and informed, check out my other YouTube channel, aptly named Armed and Informed. Amka is also deeply rooted in the biblical tradition of demanding justice and righteousness because we serve a God who loves both. The God of the Bible has always identified with the oppressed and stood against the oppressor. Now, let me talk about Trump and MAGA. Their movement is a continuation of the Tea Party movement. Their objective is singular and unchanging. It is to preserve white power, white dominance, white supremacy. And this is not speculation, this is fact. They fear the changing demographics of America. The U.S. Census Bureau predicts that by 2045, America will be a minority-majority nation. Trump and MAGA see this as a threat to white power. Hence, they are waging war on what they call the deep state. They define the deep state as the liberal progressive bureaucrats in federal agencies who, in their eyes, are helping non-white people dispossess them of this country. Trump calls these so-called liberal bureaucrats woke, and he hates them for it. But the truth of the matter is, these so-called woke, deep state bureaucrats are really nothing more than public servants working to uphold fairness, equity, and the rule of law. That's it. Trump's goal, spelled out in Project 2025 and Agenda 47, the GOP platform, is to destroy the deep state. Hence his cabinet picks, which many describe as incompetent, unqualified, unfit, they're not mistakes. He handpicked them for one purpose, again, to dismantle the deep state, our government as we know it. And so these loyalists of Trump will fire dedicated public servants and replace them with more loyalists. And this is not my opinion. This is plainly written in Project 2025. And meanwhile, in state legislatures, in the Congress, and in courts, MAGA politicians, judges, and justices will be busy rolling back civil rights laws, such as the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, the Fair Housing Act of 68, and even parts of the 14th Amendment are in his sight. If they succeed at abolishing these civil rights laws, we African Americans will be thrust back into days similar to Jim Crow. Our children and grandchildren will live in a very different country. Trump's vision is clear. With civil rights stripped away, MAGA running federal agencies, and government power returned to red states, white power will endure for generations, despite the changing demographics that's coming for our nation. This is the fight we're in. This is the fight, Amka, I created to resist. Now let's be clear about something else. Our focus, our struggle is the black struggle. We're not focused on the war in Gaza or immigration. Those communities made their choices when they voted for Trump against their own best interests. So that is their fight. That's not our fight. Besides, many of these so-called people of color are busy trying to assimilate into whiteness. But we, black people, on the other hand, we're different. We cannot be white. As the MAGA young black man learned when a white MAGA guy told him that they just needed his vote and he could never be part of the family. He learned the hard way. We already know this. Besides, if you truly know God, you don't want to be white because God made everyone in his beautiful image. Now, let me also talk a moment about the fact that you black people stood strong and most of you did not vote for a white supremacist, Donald Trump. You stood on business. You stood on business and you voted for Kamala Harris. Of course, some black men voted for Trump, and they will learn soon that that was a huge mistake. All right? Now, as we move forward, yes, all of us will experience some pain as Trump implements his Project 2025 agenda. But we cannot afford to flinch, we cannot afford to be in fear, and we cannot afford to be silent. I acknowledge it's not easy when you have people like MAGA running the country who will do everything Trump tells them because he just has this anger toward his opponents, his adversaries. But my strength and faith is in the Lord Jesus Christ and his Spirit. I also draw strength from the Bible, which is filled with scriptures showing God's love for justice. I also draw incredible strength from the courage and resilience of our ancestors. They endured horrors far, far, far worse than anything we face today. Yet they never stopped fighting, and fighting and resisting MAGA we must do in our generation. Frederick Douglass once said, quote, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. These will continue until they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress, close quote. And the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., another great freedom fighter, reminded us also, quote, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, close quote. But remember, we must bend that arc because people like us must pull it with our hands, our hearts, our feet, our voices, and yes, our votes. To learn more about Amka or to join the movement, visit lljp.org/Amka. Now say it with me 3 times. Amka, Amka, Amka.